Let's take a look at the formidable strategy this player has come up with. He's made his tag God himself in order to attempt to make opponents hesitate to oppose him for fear of excommunication from the church. If you're ever faced with such a dilemma, here's what you need to do. First, you need to quickly determine with certainty whether you are in fact playing Splatoon 2 with the creator of all things. To that end, I propose this question. If an all-powerful deity were to play Splatoon 2, would he be in A rank? Yeah, he's going down. Welcome back to our series on common mistakes players make in Ranked. We're moving on to A rank today, and as always, we're going to start with the most important element of your play, your mindset. Your mentality is the most important part of improving at this game, and it will be tested more and more the higher you climb in the ranks. In A rank, we find a lot of players that are proud of their progress and are beginning to settle on favored strategies and gear builds as they become more familiar with the game. As positive as I made that sound, it actually tends to hold A rank players back. A rank players are improving fairly rapidly, and the strategies that worked in the past will stop working as you and players around you get better. In the process of reaching a competitive level of play, my understanding of the game has been radically altered in jarring, ego-shredding ways, and it's still happening even to this day, while I have multiple thousands of hours in the game. For example, it's common to see A-rank players using weapons that don't require them to aim as precisely, like the Blob Lobber or Clash Blaster or Rollers, when the role that the player is trying to play might be better suited to something like a Squeezer or a Splatter Shot. If you don't care about improving, then play the game the way that makes you happiest. You're not obligated to be any better than you are. But if you think you do want to get better than you currently are, and you're telling yourself that what you're doing right now is fine, you could spend a lot of time not improving. People develop an unhealthy relationship with the game this way. Getting better means not doing the same thing you did before. If you're stuck in a rank you don't want to be in, something significant has to change. So like we've said before, approach the game with humility, a willingness to change even the strategies that you're proud of. Seek out the advice of more experienced players and break down your assumptions. You should be trying to figure out the truth about the game instead of wasting energy trying to prove that you're good at it, whatever that means. The results will come. Let's start our in-game tips by talking about the most difficult part of Splatoon, which is the part that's in plain sight. I've said before and will say again, your eyes will improve at this game before your hands do. Look before you leap. Beyond literally jumping into danger, which definitely happens, a lot of my A-rank opponents lose engagements because they aren't using information about my position to determine where they should be. These players have been given plenty of visual cues and sounds that should allow them to determine where I am and play around it. But instead, they refuse to break their focus, and they ignore me. If this Jet Squelcher player here retreats and kites me, like we'll talk about later, they have the opportunity to win the engagement. But I basically ambushed them even though I ran straight at their face, because they weren't paying attention. If you hear the sound of shots being fired at you, it needs to be a reflex to get out of the line of fire, turn towards those shots, and return fire. And you need to snap into that mode as fast as you'd take your hand off a hot stove. If you see a bomb, you need to stop whatever you're doing and move out of its explosion radius, and while you're doing that, consider where it was thrown from and use that to identify where the player is who threw it. If the enemy has a power clam or the Rainmaker, someone needs to be between them and your goal. Focus is your enemy here. Running at the enemy basket with a power clam, painting the Rainmaker shield, what looks like a devastating flank route through the enemy base, these will often bait you into ignoring danger. Danger in this game doesn't usually come from right in front of you. It's a lot more likely to come out of your peripheral vision. Training your reflexes to respond immediately to information behind you or beside you is a great way to break your tunnel vision and get your eyes where you need them. Keep your eyes jumping around, 1 second scoping out where your teammates are, another second where your opponents are, and then where you need to be to control the objective. Even when you are aiming and firing, don't keep your focus locked there for long, whether you're hitting your shots or not. Remember walk-and-shoot syndrome from the B rank video? Players are starting to get better about it at this rank, but you still see plenty of offenders. Don't tunnel on aiming at your opponent. If your opponent is starting to hit their shots, you've got to move. You can figure out your own aim later. You're really going to start getting punished for using stick aim in this and future ranks. The more technical your opponents get, the more you need the precise control that motion aim gives you. Again, as long as you don't get motion sickness or have a disability that prevents you from playing this way, you're only making the game harder for yourself in the long run by using the sticks. Why would you choose to do this in a game where you can do this? Kiting is a concept we see in a lot of different video games, and it's useful to talk about in Splatoon as well. You can kite an opponent if you have longer attack range than they do. To do so, you retreat from them while still dealing ranged damage, with the goal of staying completely out of their attack range so they can't touch you. Ideally, with proper positioning and good execution, you could win the fight without taking any damage at all. Start learning the ranges of all the weapons. Yes, all the weapons, not just yours. If you're playing the splatter shot and you're fighting an arrow spray, you should know you have longer range than they do, and that if you get into a fight, you can kite back, that is, retreat while shooting at them, and you'll hit them while they can't hit you. But if you're playing the splatter shot and you're fighting a jet squelcher, if you run backward, you'll be out of range to hit them, while they can still hit you. Long-range weapons are always given some kind of drawback, so you have counterplay against them. In this case, the jet squelcher has a slower fire rate and needs 4 shots to splat you instead of your 3. So if you close distance, you'll be able to splat them before they splat you. Once we figure out weapon ranges, we can start talking about a really powerful concept called zoning, which many A-rank players demonstrate they don't understand very well. This concept applies to an enormous variety of competitions. I always recommend this League of Legends video by Sherelia to players unfamiliar with the concept, because it uses easy to understand visuals that illustrate the theory concisely. I'll try, as in previous videos, to use similar illustrations to explain the concept on screen for you. Your zone of control is the space around you that it's not safe for your opponent to advance into. Your weapon's range has a huge impact on this. The jet squelcher's circle is a lot bigger than the splatter shot's, so the splatter shot can't approach it safely, right? Well, not always. Splatoon maps provide cover. The splatter shot can keep a wall between it and the longer range weapon to give it time to get within range. Lethal bombs, that is, bombs that one-shot you, also provide a temporary zone of control around them. Short of a few specials, there's nothing anyone can do to stop a bomb from exploding, so the opponent either gets out of the space or they get splatted. Short-range weapons can sometimes use these bombs to force opponents into their zone of control. Strictly speaking, one's zone of control is in 3D space, so it's not exactly a circle. Height advantage extends your zone of control by a little bit. If 2 players are in one another's zones, it comes down to how fast the players notice and react, who hits their shots faster, and how fast each of those weapons deal a lethal amount of damage. If 2 players on the same team have one enemy player in both of their zones, now the enemy player is in a 2v1, and the 2 players should almost always win unless the enemy player can get splats faster, break line of sight with one of the opponents, or use some other advantage like getting the jump on them or having better aim. Because of the way a weapon's fire rate and damage affect who wins, some weapons control their zone better than others. A roller may have a very small zone of control due to its low range, but it one-shots anyone in that range. Since rollers like running ninja squid, they might not be seen if they have ink to swim in, so a well-painted area extends that roller's zone of control pretty widely. When one team loses control of the zone around the objective, the other team is able to score. In Clam Blitz, you can score when your opponents are not controlling the zone around their basket. In Rainmaker, you can score when you're holding the Rainmaker and your opponents don't control the zone in front of it, wherever in front of it happens to be. In Tower Control, you can score when your opponents don't control the zone the tower has to pass through. In Splat Zones, well, I trust you can figure that one out. Let's see some in-game examples of how A-rank players often fail to recognize and act on these concepts. Here, this slosher has range advantage on me, but instead of kiting back to take advantage of it and get shots on me while I can't land shots on them, they advance into my zone. Meanwhile, I've put this wall between them and me, so it's harder for them to see me and hit their shots, and they never touch me before I close and splat them. I noticed, thanks to a point sensor, that there is an enemy on the left ramp. But when I turn to look, I have 2 teammates in between them and the basket, and so I feel confident going for this next fight that my basket is not compromised. However, when I turn around to look again, I notice that there's purple ink near our basket. And as it turns out, there is a brush in that position. That brush had to have gone by both of my teammates in order to get into that position. Since my teammates let the opponent into their zone of control without enforcing it, the brush was able to score for free. Here, the charger starts off in a strong position with teammates controlling the space near them, and that allows them to pick off faraway targets like me. But after splatting me, they fail to recognize that their teammates are no longer controlling the zone around the basket. They should be running away to stay out of our zone of control, but they stay and get collapsed on. Start learning to see these zones of control. Splatoon makes it really easy for you by making every weapon in the game drop paint on the ground almost exactly where the weapon's range ends, so you can see where they can shoot. You can test it in the training room by looking at the lines on the ground, or you can recon maps and figure out what you can hit from certain positions you find yourself in often. Can't hit that snipe point from where you're at? Find cover. Can't react to a short-range weapon if it were to close in on you? Pick a better sight line or keep more space between them and you. As with disengaging, like we talked about in the B rank video, you will not be good at this yet, and that's fine. Any amount of effort to apply it will still benefit you, and the more you practice this mental skill, the better you'll get at it over time. That's what ranked is about, after all, seeing yourself get better, and measuring the progress. It may take some difficult changes to get there, and you'll often fight yourself more than anyone else. But everyone can raise their rank if they spend time with the game, playing introspectively and trying to figure it out. Go get that S rank, you can totally do it. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel for more of this ranked series, as well as for Squid School highlights. Squid School is a show where I teach a group of newer players how to play at a competitive level. We talk about these concepts all the time there, and it's a great place to ask me any questions you may have. You can follow us for that on Twitch at twitch.tv/Bravous Esports, and I personally stream on Sundays at twitch.tv/StrataGem, that's STRATA_gem, GEM. We've got a bunch of other socials, and I'll direct you to the description to check those out. Thanks for watching, we really appreciate you guys.